in Syria. We saw over the weekend a really massive clamoring. Would you say that's accurate, Michael?
What?
A real
For what?
clamoring for war.
For war.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say there was a really strong push from the people you'd expect.
The drums are starting to be beaten. Bill Keller, who was a hawk on Iraq, and probably at one point has realized I made a mistake. He wants to assure us that he's not going to make that mistake again, because Iraq is different from Syria. So, ipso facto, if I was wrong about attacking Iraq, and Iraq is different from Syria, I am therefore right about attacking Syria. That is called logic, ladies and gentlemen.
Powerful deductive reasoning
Yes,
of the
I
New
don't
York
think that's
Times.
deductive. I think that is, there's another word for that. I can't remember what it is. Is it a syllogism? If A is not B, I don't know. And Tom Friedman, of course, I think was it yesterday or today, has come out with, well, what we really should do is have the whole world invade all of Syria.
Syria is like a sunflower seed. And sometimes sunflower seeds are in cabs. And when they're in cabs, you need to bomb Syria. That was his comment.
I took a ride with an Indonesian rickshaw driver whose cousin was married to a Syrian gentleman. And therefore, we should invade and tell them all to gum on this. He's changed his tune too. It's no longer suck on this. And this was all a function of the reports that there was chemical warfare being used in this conflict in Syria. And President Obama had made the rather vague statement some time ago that the red line would be crossed when a bunch of chemical weapons were used, or something also sort of equally incompetent of a phrase. I mean, if you're creating a red line, the whole point is it's a line. It's not blurry. I'm not creating a red amoeba.
The blur has been recent. He originally said...
Well, what did he originally say?
That chemical weapons used to be...
No. He said if a bunch, literally, he said, a bunch of chemical weapons used. And that is what is problematic about that. I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy, but I know that's...
I'm not looking at it like crazy. I think what he said recently was the bunch line to kind of go back into time to readjust what he had initially said.
Really?
That's what I think. But no matter. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not convinced of that.
It's blurry and silly either way.
Well, nevertheless, the point being that, so there was these reports of chemical warfare, and then we're starting to see backing away from that claim, not just by the Obama administration, but today, I believe it was, or yesterday, I should say, British, French, and Israeli experts who had expressed more confidence in their assessments of the use of chemical warfare last week are now also beginning to back up from that proclamation. Now, I don't know if that's because the Obama administration said, back off this, or if they found more evidence. Turkey also seems to be backing off this. And then we also heard from one weapons inspector, Carla Del Ponte, over the weekend, a member of the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry for Syria, a former war crimes prosecutor, say that to the extent that there's evidence of use of chemical weapons, it was used by the rebels. Now, I have no way of adjudicating the validity of that claim. I don't know how they would get this. these weapons, but who knows? The bottom line is it's very unclear. What is clear in many respects is that if we were ever going to intervene, and by we I mean the international community, it should have happened a long time ago. That was made impossible by Russia, at the very least, in terms of the UN. And rushing into a war at this point, when from my perspective, well, and my perspective is irrelevant in the way that I contemplate these things, but there is not a Benghazi-like situation, as far as I can tell. And more importantly, the UN cannot come to a consensus on it. And if we're going to use as a standard, and some people don't even think this is a valid standard, which I think is, I think everybody has a slightly different, everybody has a different opinion on this. But in my mind, this is the way that I think about it, is that I believe when there is an imminent threat of a mass slaughter of civilians, and it is deemed to be legitimate, and the only way I think that can be deemed to be legitimate is if the UN agrees on it. I do not trust any other apparatus, frankly. Then the international community, it seems to me, is obligated to get involved. And in the absence of that, I just don't think that we can unilaterally, or groups of countries, without going through the UN, as flawed as that process may be, I just don't think that we are headed in the right direction in terms of creating a more peaceful world. There's no way to do this. And I think I was saying about Syria some time ago, sometimes there's just no answer. There's no good option. And so I, in those situations in particular, think that we should defer to the most institutional option in terms of the United Nations, because the institution of the United Nations is important. And to the extent that we can ever achieve some type of international peace, I don't see how it's going to come about short of the UN. That's just my perspective. And so, in other words, I think all the blue helmets should take over this country and take away our guns.